Whenever I write anything within the single quote, then it is treated as character constant. Whatever the variable I'm going to define at the beginning, same variable I want to use throughout the program. What is the meaning of the word constant? So here constant means it's fixed value. Hello students, a warm welcome to my new session on Java evolution. I'm Revati, faculty from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So dear student, before going to start my today's session, let me to revise the topic what I have covered in my last session of this unit. So dear student, in my last session, I started with Java Virtual Machine. So what is Java Virtual Machine? This machine is present on the computer memory and it's present logically. Along with that, I have discussed command line arguments. Along with that, I have discussed object-oriented methodology in Java. These are the three topics I have discussed in my last session. So dear student, please make a note here. From the examination point of view, JVM, that is nothing but Java Virtual Machine, as well as command line arguments are important topic. That is nothing but these two are very important topic. Now, today's session, I'm going to deal with constants. Along with that, I'm going to deal with variables. Along with that, I'm going to deal with data types. In that, integer data type as well as floating point data types. Anyway, dear student, let's start our session with the topic constants. So, what is constant? Think that in my hand, I'm having 10 rupees. How many rupees? I'll have 10 rupees. So this 10 is nothing but constant value. So dear student, Java supports constant value declaration. That means programmer can able to define the constant value. So what is the meaning of the word constant? So here constant means it's fixed value. For example, I have 10 rupees. Here 10 rupees is nothing but the fixed value. Similarly, if I consider programming language, I can able to define fixed value. So then what is the meaning of the fixed value? That means whatever the value I'm going to assign, that remains throughout the program constant. There is nothing but the unchanged. So here constants in Java refers to fixed value. For example, if I write int amount equal to 10, so here 10 is nothing but the fixed value and that do not change during the execution of a program. That means while executing the program, I'm not able to change the fixed value, and Java supports few type of constants. So here Java constants are categorized into two types, numerical constants as well as character constant. Under numerical constant, I have integer constant as well as floating point or real constants. So what is numeric constants? That is nothing but the numbers. Then if I consider character constant, it's further classified into two types, character constant as well as string constant. Now dear student, let me to write the example for integer constant. Now, to define it is integer, I'm going to use the data type int. Then I'll write number equal to 100. Then this is the example for integer constant. Now let me to consider the real number. So real number in the sense it's nothing but the fractional values or fractional numbers. When I say it is fractional, it's going to have two parts. One is integral and another one is fractional part. To represent fractional numbers, I'm going to have real constant. For example, I'll write float number equal to 3.1412. So this is also example for floating point number. Then if I consider character constant, this character constant is further classified into two types. One is character constant and another one is string constant. Now tell me what is character constant. Character in the sense what? It is only one character at a time. And to define one character at a time, I'm going to have the data type called char. And the size of the char is only 1 byte. Character CH equal to A. So dear student, please make a note here. See, these are the numbers. Number constant or numerical constants. Now, to define numerical constant, I'm going to use the types like integer, float, double, etc. And if I want to define character, then that character should be written inside the single quote. That means whenever I write anything within the single quote, then it is treated as character constant. Then what about string constant? Here string is nothing but the collection of character. So dear student, when I have A, then it is only one character. But when I write A plus, along with A, I'm going to have the symbol plus. So I have two characters. Now it is nothing but the string. So what is string? It is nothing but the collection of character. Now to define string constant, I'm going to have the keyword string, or I can able to create array of character. So I'm going to create array of character and I'm going to write the character within the double quote. So this kind of representations are example for string constant. So what is string? Here string is nothing but the fixed value. So fixed in the sense what? During the execution of the program, I'm not able to change the value. And what are the different types of constants? We discussed, that is numerical or numeric constant as well as character constant. Now I'm going to have another topic of the day is variables. So what is variables? Vary in the sense what? The values are going to vary. So what is variable here? Here variables are nothing but the identifier. So what is variable? Here variables are nothing but the identifier. For example, suppose if I want to identify a pen, then I want to give some name. That is nothing but the variable. Suppose if I consider myself, to identify me, you have to give some name. That is nothing but the identifier. So what is variable here? Variables are nothing but the identifier that denotes a storage location. So what variable denotes? That denotes storage location used to store a value. Now, dear student, think that I have variable declaration, that is int number equal to 100. When I write this statement, the compiler is responsible for allocating the memory. And what is my data type here? There's nothing but the integer. Integer is capable to hold 2 bytes of memory. So what is the size of the memory? It is 2 bytes. Now think that my memory address is going to start from 1000 and it's going to end with 1002. Okay, now here variables are used to denote memory or storage location. So dear student, I'm going to give name to this storage. For example, number, and I'm going to store the value 100. Now, suppose if I want to access that value 100, then with the help of variable name, I can able to access the value, or with the help of memory address, I can able to access the value. So what is a variable here? It is nothing but the identifier that denotes a storage location used to store the data value. So what is data value here? That is nothing but the 100. Now, unlike constants, that remains unchanged during the execution of the program. Suppose if I consider constants, whatever the value I'm going to assign, that remains fixed throughout the program. But if I consider variable, as the name itself suggests that the value can be varied during the execution of the program. That means values can be changed during the execution of the program. So, variable length and breadth are used to store the value of length and breadth. So, dear student, if I consider the rectangle box, and to represent rectangle box, I am going to consider two variables, that is length of the rectangle and width of the rectangle. So here a variable name can be chosen by the programmer. That means it is completely left to the user, that user can able to choose any variable name. But while selecting variable name, it's better to give some approximate variable name or some exact variable name. So, a variable name can be chosen by the programmer in the meaningful ways so as to return what is significance in the program. For example, think that I'm going to use pi. To indicate that it is pi, it's better to specify variable name as pi. And if I'm going to use the number, then it's better to specify number. So while specifying any variable name, it's better to specify some meaningful name. Now, variable names may consist of alphabets. That means while defining variables, I want to follow certain rules. That means think that I'm the programmer and I want to create variable. But I cannot create variable according to my wish and according to my style. While creating variables, what I want to do, I want to follow the rules and regulations. So, my variable name may start with the uppercase alphabets as well as lowercase alphabet. Along with that, I can able to use digit. So, dear student, think that I'm the programmer. Now I want to define the variable. So I cannot able to define the variable according to my wish as well as my style. While defining variable, I have to follow some rules as well as procedure. In that, the first rule is I can able to define the variable by using uppercase letter, lowercase letter along with the digit. For example, if I write number, this is also valid one. If I write NUM, this is also valid one. And if I write the number with NUM, this is also valid one. That means while defining variables, I can able to mix uppercase letters, lowercase letters as well as digit. But whatever the variable I'm going to define at the beginning, same variable I want to use throughout the program. Because Java is case sensitive and I cannot able to use different variables in my program. So variable names may consist of alphabets. So small letter A to Z, capital letter A to Z along with 0 to 9. Along with that, I can able to use dollar symbol. Along with that, I can able to use underscore. Now, if I consider variable declaration rule, then uppercase alphabets as well as lowercase alphabets are distinct. And while defining variable, I cannot able to use keyword. Along with that, white space is not allowed. That means if I want to create the variable called number 1, this kind of declarations are not possible because I cannot able to give white space between the variables. Instead of that, I can able to write number 1 or number underscore 1. Both are valid. So white spaces are not allowed. Variable name can be any reasonable length. That means while defining variable, you can able to define the variable with any reasonable length. Next, I'm going to have data types. So what is data type? As the name itself indicates that it's mainly used to identify the kind of data. That means what kind of data, or it's mainly used to identify particular kind of data. For example, think that I have name and I have age. Now tell me what kind of data it is. It is nothing but the string. It is nothing but the collection of character or group of character. Now, if I consider age, what it is? It's nothing but integer or it's nothing but the number. Now, I required data type to identify what kind of data it is. That's nothing but it's mainly used to identify the particular kind of data. So, data types specify the size and type of values that can be stored. So it's mainly used to specify what size of data and what kind or what type of data that can be stored in the memory. So we are going to have variety of data. That means the data types are mainly classified into two types. One is primitive and another one is non-primitive. So here primitive data types are the fundamental data types. So what is primitive? It is nothing but the fundamental data types. Now this primitive data types are further classified into numeric and non-numeric. Numeric in the sense numbers. And what about non-numeric? That is nothing but the except number. For example, character, string, all those things comes under non-numeric. And if I consider non-primitive, that is further classified into three types: classes, arrays and interface. Anyway, dear student, let's discuss the different types of numeric data types, that is integer. So what is integer? That is nothing but whole number. For example, I have 10 rupee. So it is my whole number. If I consider floating point, think that I have 10.50 paise. That means I have 10 rupee and 50 paise. To represent it is floating point number or it is fraction, I am going to use floating point numbers. And if I consider this number, this is my integral part and this is my fractional part. So dear student, then I am going to have non-numeric. So this non-numeric data types are classified into two types: character and Boolean. Character in the sense what? One character at a time. Then what about Boolean? Here Boolean is mainly used to represent true and false value. Now if I consider non-primitive data type, it's classified into three types. One is class, arrays and interface. So what is class? Here class is mainly used to represent real world problems. When I consider it as real world problems, then it is going to have its own property as well as its own feature. And if I consider array, it is nothing but the collection of same kind of data items, and all the data items are grouped under same name and all the data items are stored in the continuous memory location. Then what about interface? So dear student, Java does not support multiple inheritance. To achieve multiple inheritance, we are going to have the concept called interface. If I define interface, that includes abstract methods as well as abstract data members. This is all about data types. Now, if I consider integer data type, integer in the sense what? It's nothing but the whole number. Now, integer data type can capable to hold whole number, and the size of the value can be stored depends on the integer data type the user chose. Here, the integer data types are further classified into four types, in that byte. So, 1 byte, short, int, long. So, how many types? 4 types. Now, if I consider floating point types. So, dear student, if I consider integer, it's mainly used to represent whole number. But if I have integral part as well as fractional part, in that time to represent that kind of numbers, I'm going to use floating point number. Now, what are the example I can able to specify? That is 27.875 or minus 123. These are the example for floating point. For example, if I write pi equal to 3.1412, this number will have integral part as well as floating point. Now, this 3 is nothing but my integer part as well as 0.1412 is nothing but the fractional part. And this floating point number is further classified into two types, that is float as well as double. So dear student, in my today's session, I started with what is variable, what is constants as well as what is data type. So dear student, from the examination point of view, all these points are very important. Now, in my next session, I am going to deal with declaration of variables, giving value to variables, assignment statement and read statement. So these are the certain topic I am going to deal in my next session. So dear student, let's meet in the next session with more information about Java evolution. Until that, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.